All right, good morning to you all. I trust we are all doing well. Let me enable the mic briefly for all of us so that I can hear you and get your feedback whether you are able to hear from me. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Let me know.
Yes,
Yes, we
All
yes.
right,
can
that's
hear
great.
you.
That's great. That's great. That's great. Once again, good morning, and you are welcome to this webinar. Um, the main object of this meeting is to help my fellow colleagues, workers, with some one or two tools here and there that could help them up their game when it comes to working efficiently. Just like the caption was, as you saw, efficient data handling and data transformation with Microsoft Power Query. The background to this whole thing is that you kind of see people working every now and then in one way or the other, that if you really look into what they do, you realize that they could do better. And, time is a non-renewable resource. And so if you are to waste so much time on doing stuff in a particular way that hitherto probably you could have done it in a better way, finished earlier, and then maybe you get to do some other thing that could be of economic benefit to you or something. Maybe be with your family. That's also good. Yeah. So I wish to help reduce that kind of burden on you by shedding some light on some of these tools. I'm sure some of us probably are already aware of the existence of some of these tools or techniques or ideas. But then, hey, it doesn't hurt to add more knowledge to what you already have, right? Good. So that is what we're going to try to do. It's going to be an eye opener to some of us. To some of us, too, I hope it helps us to remember what we already know. And then maybe possibly we'll be able to see that maybe what we already knew in a particular way could have been applicable in some beneficial way to us that if we had known earlier would have helped us. So for the purpose of what we're doing, I'm going to disable the mic for all of us, except myself, of course. But then if you have any questions or stuff like that, you can either put it in the chat or write it down. When we get to the Q&A session, you can definitely come up with your questions. I hope that's okay. If any of us kind of have something to ask or stuff like that before we start, you are free to do so. But if I don't get any feedback from us, I take it that we are good to go. One other thing that I would like to put across is that no matter what you do, no matter what your line of work, no matter your profession, I know majority of the people that from the statistics of what I've gotten so far from the registrations, I know a lot of us here, possibly about 80% of the people that will be attending this webinar are in the education field. But I've also seen some of the participants coming in from other fields, other jurisdictions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try my possible best to make it not so skewed to one direction as possible. In fact, the concepts that we are going to learn, the things that we are going to take a look at, they don't just apply to a specific area or line of work. It is beneficial. I believe it will be beneficial to any of us, no matter what you do, whether you are selling, whether you are at the bank, whether you are in the classroom, whether you are in administration or governance, whatever. In any case, all these areas that I've mentioned, they deal with data. And so it's going to be beneficial to each and every one of us. I assure you of that. All that you need to do is gain the concept, gain the ideas, and then when you get to your job specific area, you kind of tweak it to your desired need. Okay. All right. So let's disable your mics. Once again, if you want to ask a question, you can use the raise hand feature available in the system, or you can also write it down in the chat. During the Q&A session, we can deal with that. Thank you so much. Okay, so I trust we can see the screen. You can give me a thumbs up using the reaction button. If you can see the slide that has been displayed with the title of the day session over there. Can I get some thumbs up? All right, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so like I started with, we're going to go through a couple of ideas that are going to be helpful to us in our line of work to ensure that we are efficient with what we do, okay? Basically, that's the whole idea of this meetup, and possibly open your eye to certain possibilities. And I'm sure for some of us, it is going to be the starting point for a greater journey that is ahead of us. Right, so basically we are going to go through an introduction session, which I've already started. We'll look at something on automation. We will look at data, some concepts around the idea of data. We'll look at form design. We'll look at Microsoft Power Query itself, since that's the main object. We'll take a few practical demos for you to see how it works and some of the ways we can use it, and then we conclude. All right. So automation is actually part of our very being as humans, okay? We eat when we are hungry, we drink when we are thirsty, we sleep when we are tired or feel sleepy, okay? And so many other things that we do as humans. Good. Now, as we go to our various workplaces, we often find ourselves also performing tasks that kind of start from one point and then sort of end at another, right? Now, once you kind of find yourself in that situation, you realize that sometimes boredom kind of sets in. Sometimes you feel like, if you're like some people I know, they feel like, no, something else has to be done to ensure that whatever is being done in the repetitive nature is kind of optimized or stuff like that. Now, it must be noted that automation task goes with the idea of cause and effect, okay? Something happens, it triggers something, and then something gets done, okay? Remember, I started by using the analogy of humans performing some action when in certain biological state, being hungry, thirsty, itchy, sleepy, or whatever. At the workplace, sometimes maybe you receive an email, you have to respond to that. I know somebody who goes like, oh, Pat, sometimes I get so tired, and then I still have to sit down and then answer or reply to emails that my bosses have sent to me. Yeah, you can automate that so that that kind of burden can go away, okay? And there are some stuff that will need your human intervention physically, okay? But then there are some things too that you can think through the process. It always happens this way. I do this and I do that and then get sent. So that should tell you that you can make your work easier there. Now, some people choose to use programming languages and stuff like that as the techniques or the solutions that they have towards mitigating that kind of challenge. Yeah, with the Microsoft Office suite, what happens is that they have some solutions in there that you can use to automate certain things that you do, okay? Probably, I think some of us are aware of the existence of macros, that is VBA, okay? So you record macros and then get things done when something is triggered or stuff like that. And so these and many others are simple automation tasks that some of us have been doing all this while, okay? Now, basically with task automation scenarios, like I said, we identify problems or tasks that are repetitive in nature, assign some trigger points, and then the actions that need to be executed when those trigger points are kind of initiated. And I want us to have that in mind, okay? As it is with most tasks that we perform in our line of work as humans, we eventually get bored, tired sometimes. We make significant errors in what we do because if you are doing something repetitively and you are getting bored, some people sometimes get to the extent where they feel complacent and then they try to do stuff anyhow. And we don't want that to happen. Also, time again, is a non-renewable resource. And so if you expend it, you don't get it back, okay? So the need for automation in your life. All right. Can you think of some stuff that you do at the workplace that you can kind of relate to as being repetitive in nature, and you feel if something could be done about this, I think it could help me maybe finish up quickly and then do some other stuff? I want you to hold that thought, okay? So there is the case of maintaining balance between efficiency and then effectiveness. And basically, when we say you are effective at something, it means that you're able to achieve the results that you are intended to, okay? So if you are supposed to say write 10 letters a day, if you're able to write 10 letters a day, you are effective. That is your work. Write 10 letters a day. You've done it. That's effectiveness there for you. However, when we are talking of being efficient, yes, you are able to write the 10 letters a day. However, you are able to use minimal resources to do that. And resource here could mean time. Maybe you go to work for like 8 hours. Somebody is using the whole 8 hours to get the 10 letters done. You are able to use like 3 hours or 2 or even an hour to complete those 10 letters a day. And you are done. The rest of the hours are yours to do other stuff. Okay. So if you're able to do that, that is where the issue of efficiency comes in. So the one that is able to do 10 letters within the whole day, and you are able to do 10 letters in an hour due to one reason or the other, you are being efficient as compared to the one that is doing 10 letters within the whole workday. Okay, so that is the case of effectiveness and then efficiency there. And our goal is to make ourselves efficient in what we do in our line of work. Good. So what are the types of automation tools that are available for us to use? Now, we have various classifications of such automation tools. We can make mention of robotic process automation. Probably some of us have heard of RPA, okay? That is what it means, robotic process automation, where maybe you fill in forms at work, okay? Or you key in certain details at work and you have to do it over and over and over again. So there are solutions to automate that kind of process, okay? So that's an RPA process. Then workflow automation, maybe an email comes in, it has to be analyzed, certain facts or figures have to be extracted from that email that has been received, probably due to a purchase made by a client or stuff like that. And then captured into maybe a spreadsheet or a database somewhere, and then some form of report is generated and probably sent to another department or so, okay? In the educational setting, we could talk of assessment, okay? You assess students, it gets marked, the scores are transferred somewhere, cleaned if the need be, and then analysis run on those and some form of report sent somewhere. All these things can be automated. There is cognitive automation, okay? And if we are talking about cognitive automation, that's where we are dealing with the current trend that we are in now. You know, we have AI and machine learning taking over certain processes. The more the reason why as employees, we need to up our game, because trust me, these computerized systems are sort of making some of us redundant. And if we don't improve our skill set, it will get to a point where you will no longer be needed and you'll be out of job. And we wouldn't want that to happen to any of us, would we? Yeah. So we need to make sure that from time to time, we upgrade ourselves, we update the knowledge base that we have so that we'll be in tune with the current trends. All right. So there are some examples of automation, specific examples. What we looked at is actually classification of those, but then there are specific examples. And then one specific example I like is what I put on the screen there. That is, can I get someone from the audience to just type in there what this icon or logo on the screen is for? All right, let's see. What do we have on our screen? All right, so that is Microsoft Power Automate, okay? And the beautiful thing that it does is it helps automate certain processes that we have, okay, or we do on our PC, and this is compatible with Windows devices, okay. Unfortunately, if you are in the Apple ecosystem or the Linux ecosystem, you don't get to enjoy this. However, there are other alternatives, and I intend to help us take a look at some of these alternatives that I'm mentioning here. All right, so the other alternatives that you can make use of if you don't have Microsoft Power Automate, I've listed a few. So we have UiPath. In fact, UiPath is one of the most used, that's why I actually put it on, one of the most used automation softwares. There is UI Vision that exists in a browser and a host of them listed for you to take note of. All right. So these are some of them, and Microsoft Power Query actually happens to be one of those tools that are available for automation processes. All right. Other automation frameworks or tools that exist, Selenium WebDriver, Test Complete, and stuff like that. So these ones too, and those that are into Python programming, you can think of PyAuto, GUI, and stuff. Please, I don't want anybody to feel intimidated. Don't worry if you are seeing this programming aspect. We are not really going to go in depth into programming stuff. This is just to let you know that these solutions exist, okay? Well, of course, if you knew a little bit of programming, it will help you make your work easier. So I encourage you to do that anyway. There are programming languages, of course, that goes with these. And so we have Java, C++, we have JavaScript, C Sharp, Python, R, and M, which of course we are going to concentrate on a little bit in time. Then there's DAX, data analysis expressions, if you've heard of that. Then there's VBA as well. So what are the use cases for these automation stuff that we are talking about? So like I've already mentioned, if you deal with emails, you can automate stuff there. That's going to make you efficient there. Teams that collaborate on projects and stuff like that can also leverage the advantages of automation to ensure that their work is easier for them. Then these days, you do realize that businesses have resorted to the use of virtual assistants. So sometimes you try to sort of engage with a customer service agent of an entity, and then you are replied to quickly. You know, there was the issue of, or there is the issue of people not being attended to earlier when they try to get in touch with a customer service agent of an entity. And so what these businesses have now resorted to is to create virtual assistants that have been pre-programmed to respond to certain queries that customers or clients come up with. So that is also an advantage there. Then there's tax scheduling. So maybe at the end of each month, we need to send reports to certain customers or certain stakeholders or certain clients that we may have. And so you can actually automate that, generate the report and send that kind of feedback. You don't need to bother yourself having to sit down to write all that. You do it once and then it gets repeated every time the need be. All right, so there's also resource allocation where you can have these automating solutions assign resources to specific employees or whoever. All right, then you can also use some of these things to track performance so that you get to know if you are meeting your key performance indicators in your line of work or not. There is also the case where we can integrate data into certain aspects of our work, okay? So you can rely on these automation tools to take data from certain sources and then integrate them seamlessly into certain solutions that you have. Then there's the issue of data cleaning, okay? Yeah, so I always say that the data that we work with, if you and there's this general notion, okay, garbage in, garbage out. Let's dwell on that. That if you don't have good data, the analysis you run definitely is going to give you bad results. And trust me, you don't want to make decisions based on bad data or information. Now, there is the issue of security compliance automation. Then there is that of data encryption. So you can also put in the spice of automation in all these areas that you've mentioned. So essentially, the benefits here are increased efficiency, cost savings, increased productivity, improved accuracy in your line of work. You get enhanced communication because your emails are going to go on time, you're going to receive reports on time, customers are going to be happy with you. They are trying to get in touch with you, they will be able to get that on time. Parents of what in your schools, if you have, will be able to receive reports on time because that process would have been automated. Nobody will have to sit down to run reports and stuff like that and send. The whole stuff is automated. Also, there will be reduced errors, then improved streamlined workflows, okay? Improved reliable data insight because what you are putting in there, because the process has been automated and certain key factors are taken care of, you get clean data for your analysis and insights, okay? Then ultimately, you get to make improved decision making in your line of work because you are basing that on reliable data. Sometimes certain data that comes in from the field, because of the way they are churned in, tend to skew our professional decision-making processes. And we tend to make certain decisions that we later on kind of regret, and we wouldn't want that. All right, so all these seem kind of nice, right? However, there are some ethical concerns regarding handling data in this way, okay? So assuming that you work at a place where you are responsible for writing the emails and stuff like that, and then picking the values from certain documents and then entering them elsewhere. And this whole process has been automated. What happens to you? That is job displacement there. Okay. So there are some issues that people kind of have when you kind of pitch human beings against these robotic processes. Okay. Now, there's also the extent of automation. In fact, there are legalities in place that kind of need to be taken care of, that if you are oblivious to some of these legalities and then you happen to land yourself in some of these legal issues, I don't think that's going to work out well for you. So we need to be mindful of that. Then there is effect on worker autonomy and empowerment. Effect on worker autonomy and empowerment. So that one too is to be taken care of. All right, so some key takeaways regarding automation at work. It is a fact that the use of automating tools in the office has proven transformating in businesses worldwide. We can't do away with that. It's now part of us. And that is what most large organizations are relying on. Think yourself as an employee, an employer. Per general principle, everybody tries to maximize the kind of utility that they can get or the benefit they will get from whatever resource they are putting into whatever business agenda. So if I can get maybe one automation solution that will take care of the tasks that maybe I have 15 workers and then 5 will have to do stuff at a go and even takes them the whole day to do, and then I can automate that process and possibly, though, like I said, an ethical issue, and possibly lay down those 5. I don't get to pay that 5 extra employees, right? And that is money that is coming in into the business for the business to grow. So that advantage is there. And the more the reason why, as humans, we need to up our skills so that we don't get caught in that kind of process between employers and then employees, employers using or relying on AI, machines and stuff like that, so that we get displaced at work. We don't want that to happen. Don't kind of be an ostrich, bury your head in the sand and think that things will go on well for you all the time. Just arm yourself for the future. All right. Now, by embracing automation, organizations and their staff can streamline operations, increase productivity, and improve overall efficiency. And this is a fact. Now, successfully implementing automation tools will lead human beings alone. However, even an entire firm or business organization could be affected, assuming that there's company A, company B, and company A is sort of relying on the use of these modern technologies to serve its customers. They are going to work faster, they are going to be efficient, they are going to be more productive. And if company B is still going with the old ways, they are going to be slower at what they do, they are going to spend more money, they are going to have a lot of issues. Okay, so it doesn't only affect individuals but also organizations, and so the need for us to leverage these modern technologies to our advantage. Good. All right, so at this point we come to the end of the first part of this whole delivery. Okay, so I would like us to have a little bit of knowledge check on what we've done. Okay, feel free. It's not compulsory. I'm going to throw some couple of questions on the screen just to check your knowledge on what has been said so far. All right. So let's get on with that. All right. So that is the answer key to the brief quiz that we just looked at. Okay. Yeah, I'm sure that a whole lot of us were able to get it right. That will mean that you are really leaning in on what is being discussed here. All right. So quickly, we'll move on to the next part of it. All right. So the next part is actually on the case of data. Data, as we know it, is actually what drives today's world. Essentially, data refers to the raw facts that has been processed into a meaningful context. Meaningful context because you could mention something in a particular context and it will have some kind of meaning, okay? But when you get to a different industry, if you mention that, it has a different meaning. And that's why we are saying that raw facts that have been processed into a meaningful context is what we are referring to as what? Information, okay? So data, raw facts processed into a meaningful context becomes information for us one way or the other. In this era, data is actually the backbone of decision-making processes. It fuels AI global connectivity and has economic value. When we say decision-making processes, you do realize that for a business entity to maybe decide to produce more units of a particular product as against a particular line of product that they have, they will need data to do that, all right? If an institution or a university intends to actually put in certain effort into making a particular course successful, it will be based on the data that they've had, okay? And these days, you do realize that most business universities they're actually advertising their courses. What has informed that? Have you ever thought of that? And it is data that is driving that kind of action among them. Okay. Now, there is also the issue of technology and AI. Okay. Now, all the AI and stuff that we are seeing around these days, the chat GPTs and the Geminis and the DeepSeeks and the rest, they are all being powered by data. The owners of these entities are employing, actually investing resources into getting people to feed these systems with data. And it is based on studying that data or being fed with that data that they are able to produce the wonderful results that we are most of the time stand by. Okay. All right. Now, there is also the issue of global connectivity. These days, you're able to go online, you're able to check stuff here and there. Have you ever wondered why or how you're able to do that? It's because data is available for that to go on for you. Essentially, all these culminate to one factor, which is economic value. If you are not aware of this, let me tell you this. Some organizations actually make money from gathering data about you, and that is their gold, that is their oil, and they make serious kind of money. So it has economic value. Data has economic value. It has the potential to also destroy something or some entity. It has the potential to also make something good and bring a whole lot of benefits. Okay, so let's take note of that. However, there are some challenges when it comes to the issue of data, like I was saying. So there are privacy concerns. Of course, I've mentioned that some organizations actually make money off people's data. And so because of that, they try to do anything possible to get their hands on that kind of data, good or bad. There is also the issue of misinformation and the issue of data security and risk. So these are some of the issues that we need to take note of. Cyber attack, theft identity, and phishing and stuff. All these are issues surrounding the idea of what data. There is the importance of data, like I have said, is the new oil, the new gold, and it's shaping economies, various governmental institutions, even as individuals. It is shaping our very lives. Okay, as we speak, data is doing a whole lot of things in our lives, and do not be left out. Because data is kind of influencing us, I mean, our lifestyle, everything that we do, and all that. It is essential that we get good data. I hope you agree with me on that. For instance, food is what sustains us as human beings. Water, we drink water to sustain us. However, should you take in bad food or bad drinking water, you know what happens. I don't need to tell you. In a similar fashion, when it comes to data, because we are feeding it into certain systems or making very important decisions based on that kind of data, we need to have accurate data, good data, okay? Assuming you are in the medical profession, and before any good doctor will have to make certain informed decisions, which is life and death, I think the ideal thing is for them to diagnose, to get meaningful data on the subject at hand, so that if they are deciding to maybe give you a dose, it's not out of just intuition, but rather they are giving you that dosage based on the fact that they've diagnosed you in ABC ways, and they've been able to ascertain that because of your condition in this manner, you are to take this amount of this medication, without which it could mean an issue of life or death. Assuming that your head is not paining you, but whoever is at the lab gets data to the doctor that, oh, this guy is having serious headache. Based on that, the doctor decides to give you a particular medication that you are not supposed to be given. And that is going to be disastrous for you. So we wouldn't want that to happen. All right. So when we talk of good data, we are looking at data that can help us make informed decisions, that can help us be efficient and productive, that will fuel innovation and AI advancement, that will enhance customer experience, help us to mitigate against risk in the future, and then ultimately improve the trust that stakeholders or clients may have in our line of work. Okay, so improved decision making, we are talking about accurate data leading to better business strategies, policy making, and stuff like that. Okay, so for instance, assuming that leaders in the line of education decide that, okay, we've realized that at the central region of Ghana, they are lacking some number of classrooms, and so we are going to build classrooms for them. What would they need? They will have to know the number of classrooms that are lacking, so that when the budget is being done, they'll be able to ascertain that, okay, we need to put up maybe 10 classrooms in central region, and then maybe put up 5 in greater Accra region. If they are giving the wrong data, they may end up, for instance, whoever is supposed to give the data rather goes to give central region as 20 or even 2, and gives greater Accra region maybe 10, whilst that may not be the case. So you do realize that resources will not be properly be allocated, and that is going to be detrimental to the whole economy. In fact, it's going to affect the whole country in general, because money that could have been used to do other stuff in other sector probably will be channeled to do that stuff. And when it gets there, it will happen that there was even no need for that many classrooms in the first place. Similar thing in the business industry is based on data that certain product may be produced. So if wrong data is given, it will happen that whoever is supposed to act on that data may take certain decisions, of course, also in the line of budgeting or allocating resources or finances. It's going to happen that whoever is going to have to allot financial resources and other resources for the production of that product may act on wrong data, and so we may end up doing the wrong thing or taking the wrong decisions in the first place. All right, let me tell you about this thing. I'm a teacher by profession, and at the training college, what happens is that you are posted to a particular township to do what is called the out program. Okay, and teachers who have joined in will relate to what I'm saying. And those times we were collecting some amount of stipends or allowances, and most people will kind of spend their own before the month ends, and so they will be hard pressed at some point in the month. So it got to that point of the month where people are hard pressed. Now, where I was, there was this guy that liked to joke. He actually went to town where the bank is and then came back to tell other colleagues that, Charlie, they've paid, oh, not knowing one of us had kept some money down that he was going to use as transportation to get to the bank to withdraw money to help him sail through the rest of the month. And upon hearing that there was money at the bank, he decided to use the little that he had to travel all the way to where the bank was with the idea that he will be able to get money. So if he spends that money, it doesn't matter. He's going to get it back. And this guy came back furious. Why? Because he got to the bank and apparently payment had not been done. So it was a ruse that the guy just came to tell us that they've paid. So this guy actually took that decision based on wrong information. And that is wrong data there. And look at what cost him. He now had to go and look for means to get money that will sustain him until payment has been done. So this is to tell us that we make decisions in life. And the decisions that we make in life are based on data. So if the data is not good enough, what is going to happen is that you are going to make decisions that are negatively impactful in our lives, okay? And we wouldn't want that to happen. Another thing we can take note of here when we are talking about good data and bad data is that assuming that the weather forecasters, I think at some point in time in our country, people had some level of mistrust for what they kind of were churning out because they felt like if they said it's going to rain, then the sun was on all day. The day that they would say the sun is going to be on, then it rained. Based on that, people would want to farm or not want to farm, would want to go somewhere or not want to go somewhere. So assuming that you've been told that today is going to rain, and so you decide, okay, if it's going to rain, then let me reschedule my activities. I won't go out today. Maybe I'll do one or two things in the house. Only for you to get through the day and there was no rain and you were not able to attend whatever you were supposed to attend. So it also builds some kind of mistrust on the part of clients towards us, assuming that you are an institution, an educational institution, and then you are giving bad reports on the students in your school. It's not that that is the case, but then due to some erroneous data analysis, you probably have churned out some figures that are untrue. And so it's painting some sort of bad picture about the institution. So what's going to happen is that if later on is realized that that information you've been churning out all this while is not the case, you lose the kind of trust that people have in the kind of information that you are expected to churn out. So like I said, leads to poor decision making. Your reputation is damaged because you say it's going to rain today, it doesn't rain, it rains tomorrow. The sun is going to be up today, that doesn't come up. So hey, why should we trust you next time when you say so? Yeah. Then there is the issue of security risk. Yeah, probably because we are not trusting what you say. We are not going to put measures in place to mitigate against future problems that we are likely to face. Also, it leads to wastage of resources and then sometimes legal issues that we need to deal with and misinformation in the first place. Now, because of all these things, we've mentioned that there are some legal issues in place. Because of all these, and there are internationally recognized data frameworks, governance frameworks in place, okay? So we can talk of the data management body of knowledge. We can talk of the COBIT. We can talk of the DCAM. We are not going to go so much deep into these things, but I just want you to know that these exist. For instance, there's the GDPR, General Data Protection exists, okay? So we need to take note of that. When we talk of these frameworks, okay, they actually look at stewardship, metadata management, and then compliance. That's what they generally do. When we talk of stewardship, we are talking about who owns the data or who approves the data, who keeps the data, and that kind of stuff. When we talk of metadata management, we are talking about the properties relating to the data that is being kept and how it is being kept, okay? When we talk of the GDPR, I think I've already mentioned that, the data protection regulation, okay? That is what we are looking at there. Let's look at how then we should capture data and the tools that exist for us to capture data. So we have various tools available to us to capture data. However, there are those that are free, and my guess is majority of the people that have joined in on the day's discussion are people who may be using it at the individual level or a little bit at the organizational level. We have tools like Google Forms, which I know a lot of us have been using. Microsoft Forms, that one too, a lot of us use it. There is Kobo Toolbox or ODK that some organizations to use. You can also use at an individual level if you like. There's Typeform, JotForm, Zoho Form, SurveyMonkey, and all these are great tools that are available. These have certain features to ensure that we capture data from our subject. So let's move on and talk about automation features that exist or tools that exist when it comes to data capture. So there's OpenRefine, there are Python libraries like Pandas, NumPy, and all that. We have ETL tools. When we talk of ETL, that is extract, transform, and then load. And Power Query that we're going to zoom in on is actually an ETL tool, okay? It helps us to extract data from some source, transform that data, and that's what we are looking at as cleaning, and then load it into some system for further analysis and visualization to be done. Now, let's talk about the data cleaning process, because we want clean data. Good data, remember, leads to making good decisions. And so the main goal when it comes to good data is that we want to deal with fixing inaccuracies. We want to deal with duplicates, okay? We want to deal with inconsistencies. The date, are you following the day, month, year format, or you are dealing month, day, and year? So if you have field of data and then it has these anomalies in there, ultimately, when you are analyzing the data, it leads to wrong results, and wouldn't want that to happen. So because of that, there is the idea of standardization where you ensure that, for instance, currencies have the same currency, they have the same decimal places, dates are following the same format, let me put it that way. And sometimes statistically, we can detect outliers, usage of z-scores or AI or machine learning to sort of detect these things and handle them. Then how we handle missing data in our collected data too is also a factor to kind of look at over there. So there's this critical link here. Proper data collection minimizes what? Cleaning and transformation in the first place. For instance, assuming that you've been put in charge as a cleaner in a particular firm. Now, we have one office that those there, probably due to what they do, they generate paper waste, stuff like that. If you are assigned to that space, you do realize that when you go in there, you have to work more compared to a different employee that is placed elsewhere where probably there are about one or two people in that office and they are hardly even there. And so when you go into that office, you do realize that you don't have a lot of work to do over there. However, if you go to the other office where you have a lot of people and then they generate a lot of waste and stuff like that, then you have more work to do over there. So the general idea is that keep it clean in the first place so that once you get to that transformative level, you don't need to really work so hard to get the data cleaned up. I hope the idea is clear. Good. So the cleaner your data at capture, the less effort you need to put in to fix it later. Just have that in mind. So for instance, if you are designing a form to capture data from the field from your subject or respondent, think it through. Make sure that the data that you are capturing, you try to make it as clean as possible as it's coming in. And how do you do that? We're going to go through a few techniques here and there. That is where you put in stuff like validation rules, input marks, regex formulas, and stuff like that. It may sound a bit complex, but don't worry, they are very simple. So you do these things to ensure that the data that is being churned in is clean in itself, probably with minimal issues here and there that you later on will have to deal with. All right, so that is the idea I'm trying to push across. So if you have clean data, you have to do less cleaning, which means fewer fixes, fewer transformations, so that you get to write simpler Power Query steps. Or if you are using Power BI, your workflows are sort of streamlined. You don't need to go about writing a whole lot of DAX here and there. Yeah. Then because of that, you get to make decisions sooner because you don't have to waste a lot of time cleaning the data. Data gets prepared quickly, and then you are able to visualize the data to gain the kind of insights that you have to. So some best practices for form design to ensure clean data. Now, I'm saying keep it simple and focused, okay? So as much as possible, collect only data that is relevant to your course. Don't waste the time of respondents by collecting irrelevant data from them. Keep it as simple as possible. This is very, very necessary. And try to group the questions in a logical manner. Okay, so for instance, I'm collecting data from you. I'm asking about your first name, middle name, last name. Then suddenly I ask of the total number of products that you have sold. Then I go back again and ask for your gender. Figure out what is happening. So there isn't a logical flow to what I'm doing. Try to group the questions or the question items in such a manner that seems logical. So it kind of shifts the person's mindset at some point in time towards a particular area so that when they are answering the questions, they're able to give you good input. The other thing is, if you have a lengthy kind of form, probably what you put there, they are all necessary, okay? You need to have the respondent experience some sort of feedback, okay? So step, maybe page 1 of this, step 1 of that, so that they are kind of in tune and know what is going on. So I've given some example there as a 5-part form. So it captures name, email, password, country, and then the consent. Whilst the same sign up from somebody kind of does it with 20 fields, putting question items there that are needless, okay? We don't want that to happen. All right, the next thing is to standardize the inputs. And I think I've already spoken a little bit about this, where I said we could use station rules and input. Okay? So for instance, where you can use drop downs, ensure that you use drop downs. I've seen people design forms and then instead of using drop down, so for instance, maybe I want you to write your region, the region that you are in. Instead of allowing the people to type in the region themselves, why not provide the list of regions for them? It will do you a lot of good when you are handling the data later, because if you allow respondents to key in the names of the region, which is obvious to everybody already, person A may choose to maybe, for instance, if I'm writing Cape Coast as a location, I may choose to use maybe CC or C dot, then I write the coast in full. Somebody too may choose to write Cape and then abbreviate the C. All these are going to give you different variations of the same answer, which you would have to later on spend time to clean up. You are collecting gender, male, female. If you don't use a drop down, what is going to happen is that person A may choose to say, okay, I'm male, so M. The other person too may choose to write it in full, M-A-L-E. Somebody too may choose to write all in caps. Somebody too may choose to write all lowercase. Are you getting the problems that will crop up later? So later on, if you are, say, analyzing that data set, that how many males are in there, and please note that these ETL tools are usually case sensitive. And so if you wrote male as M-A-L-E, all uppercase, And then another time, somebody wrote capital M, then small letters ALE. These are two different feedback that has been received. So we need to standardize that kind of data. And for you to force respondents to help you standardize that, that is where you use the drop down. So always think through this particular question item. Can I provide the list for the respondents to choose from? And please, if you are, some people tend to use radio buttons. It's not bad if you are doing a few items, so like male, female, and use a radio button. That's okay. But some people choose to use radio buttons where they have like a whole tall list. Like I'm listing the countries in the countries in Africa. Then I use radio buttons. That is wrong. You need to use a drop down so that it keeps your form neat, because respondents will look at it and it's kind of intimidating. We don't want that to happen. All right. Then sometimes if the tool you are using supports it, you are encouraged to use autocomplete features, okay? So that respondents can actually benefit from that. Then I've spoken about input marks. Those of you that have had the opportunity to work with database systems, I'm sure you are familiar with input mask, okay? Where you get to specify, you get to sort of specify what is to be put in somewhere and all that. All right. Okay, so if it is also possible, validate the data in real time, okay? Validate the data in real time. Some of these things can be done using certain advanced features that exist in some of the tools that we have mentioned. So for instance, I know Google Form now has the regex match feature, okay, which is a huge benefit when it comes to designing the form, because you can use that to check. For instance, if I want respondents to key in their phone numbers, if you don't take care, people will give you phone numbers that you cannot use. Email, if you don't take care, people will give you emails that are not usable. So how do you mitigate against that? What you do is you can use the regex feature in there to enforce that good emails are submitted to you, good phone numbers are submitted to you. Regex is actually a different language in itself. I will encourage us, those of us that may be interested, to dive in there and then learn it. In fact, I actually have a YouTube channel set up. I'm going to put a whole lot of videos in there to explain in detail some of these things that we've spoken about over the period, okay? So that we take it one at a time and then you get to understand how to do stuff. So you can sometimes also have range checks. There are some of the form capturing tools that have the capacity to help you check the range. Use that if it exists. Another thing that you need to take note of is that you need to give feedback, okay? You need to give feedback. So if the person is actually entering a wrong email, give feedback that the person is entering a wrong email. Don't assume that every respondent is at the same technical level as you are or understand how the form works, okay? It's not everybody that understands it that way. You need to try to preempt, try to think of the mistakes that people will do and what can I tell them so that they will come back in line and then do the right thing. So you think that through. So for instance, the example that I've given here, the person gives a correct email, that's fine. But if they give a wrong email, let the person know that please enter a valid email. And perhaps you give an example, not an actual email, but an example that conforms to the pattern that a correct email is supposed to be. And that will also help to try to avoid jargons as much as possible, especially when the respondents are not in the same line of work that you are in. For instance, we are in the same line of work. Probably we understand a particular jargon. So if I use it there, I'm expecting that the targeted respondents will be in the known of what I want to collect. However, if your form is going to be general in nature, filled by respondents that probably you may not know, it is advisable that you don't use jargons, okay? So instead of saying DOB, write date of birth in full. And I think that would be known to everybody. As much as possible, you use placeholders if the data capture tool that you are trying to use conforms to that or has that feature. Use that feature. So for instance, I've given an example here where I'm saying date, then I've specified the pattern or format, so DDMMYY. So this helps the person to visualize the kind of input that he or she has to make, okay? And that will help reduce the errors in the data submission. And like I have said, if the person gives wrong input, try to give feedback. So for instance, if you are trying to get them to give you a password, that should be an alphanumeric, that should be alphanumeric in nature, 8 plus. Let the person know that password must be 8 plus alphanumeric characters, and that's going to help a lot. The next thing is, once you finish designing the form, you need to test it. Test it, make sure that, okay, the form that you designed is actually working perfectly. And sometimes if you can get some colleagues to test it out for you, do that so that you get to see the issues in there, okay? Now, if you have time, you can design a second kind of form in a different way, and then you do what we call the A/B testing. So you test the first one versus the other one. Then secure and complaint design. We are talking about privacy issues here and there, satisfying general data protection regulations, and then usage of captchas. Right? The captcha feature, you know, sometimes when you are trying to log in into a form or stuff like that, then some wiggled up text appears for you to type in order to ensure that participants kind of are secured. You can use such feature over there. Let's look at some of this with designing and administering forms for the sake of clean data. Okay, we are saying that designing the form properly reduces data cleaning. Okay, so because you've taken care of certain errors that people have to make by providing validation rules using regex expressions and all that to ensure that what is being channeled is the right thing. Okay, then it will also boost your completion rate. So your participants, because remember we said don't include fields that are not necessary. You streamline your form. It's following a logical process, and so it's user friendly. And then participants or respondents will get to easily provide the feedback that is required of them. Okay. It also saves time. Nobody likes to waste their time on stuff. So I'm going to go straight on to the Power Query session so that we can conclude on that. So Power Query is actually a data transition tool. I think I've already mentioned that it's an ETL application. Extract, transform, and load. It helps us to get data from some source. It's not a form, doesn't work like Google form. Rather, after people have filled your Google form and the data is being stored on a spreadsheet and stuff like that, you would want to then bring that data into Power Query, transform it into a particular desired form so that you can then load it into a tool such as Power BI to perform analysis on it. There's also the existence of Tableau, okay, that we can use to perform similar analysis. Then there's Google Looker Studio that we can use to visualize the data and stuff like that. Now, so like I've said, it connects to various data sources like Excel, databases, web platforms, APIs, PDFs, JSON files. You can extract data from there and then transform them. So once you've extracted the data, the idea is to clean the data, prepare that data so that you can use it in a different way for whatever purpose that is desired. Some key benefits of using Power Query is that we could say it's a no code or low code. I'm saying no code because it has a point and click interface. Okay, so if you are not a programmer, somebody who is versatile with or okay with programming languages, don't worry. It has a visual interface that you just look, point, click, and get the job done. You are good to go. All right. However, for other users that may want to get their hands dirty with the code base of this application, it goes with what is called the M language. Okay. Now, the M language is actually a case-sensitive language. From the feedback that I got during the registration, some people were asking about DAX, D-A-X, okay? That's a data analysis expression. Yes, it also exists in Microsoft Excel as well as Power BI, but DAX can be related to Power Pivot within Microsoft Excel and not Power Query. We don't write DAX functions or formulas or expressions in Power Query in itself. Rather, we do that in Power Pivot, which is a different area altogether, though related to data handling. Our focus today is on Power Query, where we are dealing with how to clean the data, how to get the data into Power Query, maybe transform it a little bit and then load it back. And from there, if you want to load it into a data model to handle it with the DAX expressions in Power Pivot, or you want to throw it in Power BI and then work on it from there. Yeah, that's okay. And because of the way it is, it's able to handle large data set compared to, I mean, somebody will say, but these days Excel is actually having a whole lot of, the native Excel itself is having a whole lot of features that one can leverage to clean up data and use. But there is the issue of automation and also further the issue of large data sets. Excel will get slow once you throw large data sets at it, especially when it has to do with a lot of formulas, working on a lot of formulas on the data that you've thrown in there. So in order to avoid that, if you have a small data set, that's okay. If you can do it in the native Excel itself, that's okay. However, when it comes to large data sets, you can start facing performance issues in there. And so that's why something like Power Query exists, okay? So we can also automate the process such that it's not always that you have to repeat that cleanup process, but rather what you have there becomes like a template. So anytime that kind of data set flows in, it gets cleaned up, it gets arranged in a particular way, and then gets sent to a particular system, okay? Essentially, appending or merging messy data is an advantage here, and then compilation of student records for further analysis becomes an advantage for us there. All right, so how does it look like? So this is the interface for Microsoft Power Query, at least how we get into it. Get in there, you launch your Microsoft Excel application. Once you've launched the Microsoft Excel application, you look for the data tab, which is at the top. I've indicated with the one there. Then there is this group on the ribbon called Get and Transform Data. Please note that there are several ways for getting in there to work with Power Query. Some people may decide to, if they have an official Excel table, right-click on it and get data from. That will also get you into Microsoft Power Query. Don't worry, we'll take a few practicals here and there. So that is essentially one of the ways or some of the ways you can use to get into Microsoft Power Query. Again, you open Microsoft Excel. Once you've opened Microsoft Excel, what do you do next? You click on the data tab. Then you go to the Get and Transform Data group. That is how you can get in there. Any of those icons there, based on what you are trying to do, will get you in there. All right, so let's have a quick overview what the interface looks like. So when you launch into the Microsoft Power Query system, you will realize that it has the title bar where it actually will let you see the name of the application. Then, of course, there's the ribbon and the tabs, file, home, transform, add, column, view, convert. All those are there for your usage. Then there is the close button over there. Essentially, once you are done working on whatever, all that you have to do is go to the close and load button and then get things done. All right. We are not going to attempt to touch on all the features that are existing there. However, the only thing we're going to do is I will encourage you to take note of this. As you practice using this tool, a whole lot is going to get revealed to you. Read around it, watch videos, ask questions about it. I'm sure there are people around that are conversant with its usage and are willing to help you. But for today, we are kind of getting an eye opener to this whole system. And like I said, there's a YouTube channel I have where I'm going to put a whole lot over there for you to sort of run along with. And so it's not going to be like you are going to be alone. And there are other YouTube channels too that the usage of some of these tools. So feel free to visit those ones too, and then get yourself well acquainted with that. All right. So with that said, let's have a practical demo then, so that you get to see what I'm talking about. Somebody will say, you've been talking about Power Query, Power Query, Power Query. Okay, so how does it work? All right, so let's see if we can do something small. Please, if you can see the screen, give me a thumbs up. All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So to get to Microsoft Power Query interface, you launch your X in the normal way. You don't need to do anything that special. And I believe we all know how to launch Microsoft Excel. Once you've launched Excel, you go up there to your ribbon where you have File, Home, Insert, Draw, Page Layout, Formulas. Our interest is on the tab called Data. When we click on that, then we go to Get Data. So assuming that I'm trying to get data from some files. So for instance, I can go maybe Excel workbook. So data from this source. Okay. So assuming I want to get data from this, I just select it and then click on import. And once you click on import, Microsoft Power Query window displays an interface like this for you. Now, it could happen that you want it from multiple files. That is also doable. We'll take a look at that. So this interface that has been captioned Navigator is presented to you. Once it's presented to you, you will be given the opportunity to choose from a list. Now, the list that will be made available to you is actually the list of sheets or tables, or let me say objects that exist within the Excel sheets that you are trying to pull the data from. Not only Excel sheets that you can pull data from PDF, like I've told you earlier on. You can pull it from JSON files, you can pull it from HTML files, you can pull it from CSV files. Okay, in this case, it just so happens that I'm running the test on an Excel sheet. Now, once you click on the desired Excel sheet, it gives you a preview of the data set that is in there. Once you are satisfied with what you are looking at, perhaps that is the kind of data that you wish to work on. And mind you, the data set is actually data statement. It's not an actual data set. So if you see some names in there, it's not an actual staff IDs in there. It's not an actual staff ID. These are fictitious data and that we are just using for the practical session. So please do take note of that. All right. So there are these buttons that once you selected the sheet, either to load to or load the data. If I click on load, what it's going to do is going to pick all of this data and then put it on the spreadsheet that I have. As simple as that. Okay. If I do load to, what it's going to do is it is going to ask me where I want to go and put that data on the spreadsheet. So it gives me the option to load it to a particular area. So if I click on load, because sometimes I'm saying this because some people get confused. Which one should I click, load or load to? Or should I click transform? Now, when do you click on transform? You click on transform data if you intend to manipulate the data a bit. That is by way of cleaning and then rearranging certain columns or stuff like that, or getting rid of some columns or transforming some data fields to uppercase or lowercase or something like that. If that is your intent, then it's okay to click on transform data. But if your intent is to just grab that data and then bring it inside your Excel sheet, and that is all, then you are free to click on load. All right. For the sake of what we're doing, we're going to proceed further and click on transform data. Once you've clicked on transform data, a new interface is going to be launched for you, and that is the Microsoft Power Query interface. Note that Those of you that are familiar with Power BI, Power Query also exists within Power BI. So if you launch Power BI, again, you can find Power Query in there. The data is such that if you, let me zoom in, the data is such that if you look at it carefully, you realize that the data that we actually need has the heading starting from row number 3. The one up here is actually giving us the amount, year, kind of some null values here and there. So essentially, if we attempt to load this kind of data into something like Power BI or Looker Studio, Tableau, or stuff like that to analyze the data, one thing that you can take note of here is the data is not well structured, okay? Because for you to really have a fluid data analysis experience, each field that you are seeing in here is supposed to contain data that is similar in nature. And I say, I'm trying not to be technical, okay? So for the first field, for instance, look at the heading. The heading is kind of a date and time, and the content in there. Some you see month of July, then you come to a 1, 2, 3. These are different data sets that are appearing in the same field, and that is wrong. Then when you come to the second column, you realize that it also has year, null, heading, then some staff IDs. Again, we have a mixture of data in there, so we wouldn't want that. Now, the key to transforming data is being able to visualize the data and then ascertain how you want the data to look like. And because you want the data to look in a particular way, when you see the data and it's not appearing that way, you take micro steps to try to deal with that. Of course, at the beginner level, you won't be able to do complex stuff at a go. That's what I'm saying, micro steps, okay? So the question is, you ask yourself, what do I have to do from this point? Maybe what I can do is I can tell myself, I want this line to be the heading. And there's a feature for doing that. So for instance, I can click in here, go to transform. There are certain features that we have in there for cleaning the data that we have. If you would like to add a column, we have features in there that allows us to add columns, add functions. For instance, this over here, the format option, that allows us to convert the data that is in there to either lowercase, uppercase, or capitalize each word, trim, clean, add a prefix, add a suffix. Maybe that's how you want the data to look like. You want all the data to be in the uppercase, you can do that from here. One other thing that I want us to take note of is that there is this formula bar, and if you are not seeing it, you go to view, then you go and tick formula bar over here. Go to view and you tick formula bar over here. That will enable the formula bar. When we click on that to expand it, I recall the first time I got to experience this, I was looking at this and I was confused. I don't know if we have any participant who has sort of encountered the M code and is kind of wondering what it means or what it does. You try to read it and then it kind of doesn't make sense, complete sense, let me put it that way, if you are unaware of what it means. When you see these, it shouldn't intimidate you. They are just there to help us deal with the data in there and ensure that the data that we are working with, they are in good shape for analysis. All right, so that is it with the M code up there. To the left of the screen, we see a blank area, but we see worksheet, dummy, list. It will be different for each and every one of us, depending on what you are doing. What we have here at the left side are the queries that has been written by you, the user, okay? So if you generate a query, it gets listed over there. So if you want to work on it, you just go there and click on that query and then you use it. Good. Now, over here to the right, we have the query settings field where you get to name the query. You get to see the steps. Remember, I told you that in an attempt to clean the data, you take micro steps. So by doing that, each step that you work on gets listed over here. So there's the source step, there's the navigation step, promoted headers, change type. You get to understand what all these means in due time. All right. Now, so basically, that is one way of getting data into Power Query to sort of work on. And once you are done working on the data, you go to close and load. And like I told you, the close and load will automatically pick the data set and then dump it on your spreadsheet. Whilst the close and load tool, let me do that one, will present you with a dialog window that will ask you to choose how you want the data loaded onto your sheet. Do you want it stored? So that's where you do what is called create connection only. So it has been done. It is in memory, and when you need it, you can pull it. You want to convert it to a pivot chart, a pivot report, or you just need it as a table, or you would like to specify it as a table on the existing sheet at a particular location. So you do that and then you click on OK, and that data will get loaded back. Remember, at this point, it is assumed that you have cleaned the data and the data will be in a certain way that you so desire so that you can run analysis on it. Obviously, what I have presented is not in the ideal state. A whole lot of work should be done on it. Get the header in its right place and all that. All right, good. So basically, this is a quick introduction to what Power Query does. The next thing that I want us to take note of is that Power Query with its M language has value type. So we have the value type called null. Now the null value type actually is a way of telling Power Query, or Power Query telling you that whatever field that you have there is blank. Is blank. It doesn't hold any essential value. Then there's logical value type. The logical value type is actually the result of a logical expression. So 2 is greater than 1. That will result in a true or false. So if 2 is indeed greater than 1, then the result is what? True. If it is not, the result is false. So it gives a Boolean kind of feedback. So it's either true or false. Then there is the text value type. When we talk of the text value type, all that we are talking about here is that we are working with strings. Just so it is not so abstract, let me just bring back the Excel screen. Then we'll dive back into our query. What I'm going to do is to generate what is called a blank query. So you can right click in the query area to the left. Okay, go to new query. Of course, you have the option to bring in all these Excel, CSV text, XML, JSON file, PDF, work from a folder, database, the Microsoft database, data flow, and all the Azure platform. But what we are interested in is pulling a blank query. A blank query basically means a clean slate. You don't have anything. I just want us to get to understand what some of these things mean. Right, again, I'm going to zoom in. So when we say now, if I write null in here, then I commit, I get null. We've talked about a logical value type. So I can start the expression with an equal to sign. And remember, I said 2 is greater than 1. Let's see if we commit what. So it gives us a true. Of course, 2 is greater than 1. Then, if I say 1 is greater than 1, that is a false. So logical expressions will give you a true or a false. If we are talking about text, always text gets put within double quotes within the M language. So you see, I've written 1 is greater than 1, but I've put it in double quotes. And this time, the same thing is presented back to me because it is just viewing it as a string or text. And so it is not really performing any calculation on it. It's just throwing back at me what I gave to it. There's also another value type that we can make mention of as number. And the number type exists in different forms. Those of you that are a little bit familiar with get to understand and the fact in programming, the numbers that the computer handles has significant, or the data type that the computer handles has significant effect on the memory. So if you are using a float point value, it has its effect. If you are using an integer, it has its effect. So the number types specified here, we have the, for instance, I've given a few of them, the int 16 dot type, we have int 32 dot type, we have the int 64 dot type, okay, and others. So what happens is that if you, let's switch back to our query window. If you would like to know the value type that a particular expression is producing, what you can do is type value.type. Then you put whatever it is in the parentheses, okay? Like that. So value.type, I've put 1 in there. What is it telling me? That 1 is a number. Assuming I put in here A, it's a text. However, there is also a date value type. And I think we are familiar with what dates are, okay? Date. Then there's the date time, which gives us date that has time at the end. Then there's a binary option. The binary option or value type actually references a file. So for instance, if I'm pulling in a PDF JSON file, they will first come into the editor space as a binary before then we zoom in and then convert its content to whatever we need to work on. So do take note of that. When we will take some examples and then you get to know. Then there is another data option called list. In the M language space, when we are talking about lists, anytime you see something that is sort of in curly braces here, let's put that there and then commit. So it tells us that it is a list. That is because I can actually bring a comma and maybe say B. I can bring a comma and say C. So I have a list. Take note of this. Let me do this. Take note of this, that you can have different data types within a list. So you see I have A, B, and then 1 is still a list. Let's see how it gets represented without this. So a list is simply a single columnar structure within the editor space, okay? So usually it doesn't have any heading aside the word list. So whatever we put in the curly braces up there gets listed just like that. So if I go and put 0 here, I commit, we get 0. So anything that you will just get added at the bottom like that. All right, so that is a list. However, there's also another data type called a record. Now, a record gets packed within a bracket. So we open a bracket, we close the bracket, then we get a record. Let's see an example of how a record looks like. So we can have a record this way. Let me clean off this and say maybe name equals, say, done. If I commit, this is what I get. What we are saying, you do realize that now the way it appears is different from what we had previously. So name is done. If I want to add, I can have another, maybe age 23. So it gets added up like that. Yeah. So this is what is referred to as a record. Okay, a record. So a record will have what you would think of as the headings to the left, and then the value that are assigned to those fields will appear to the right of it. It has that two structure approach. Whilst the list will just have one columnar structure like that. And it's not always that something is one columnar, and because it's one columnar structure, it's a list. Single columnar table in there. But then usually a table will have filters on it. Doesn't have filters and it's just having the title called list, then that is a list, okay? If it is transposed with the column headings to the right, to the left, and then the values that are to be entered are at the right, then it's a record. So do take note of that. All right. Then that is a table. So we have a list, we have a record. There's also a table. Now, how does a table look like? Of course, we've just had the experience of a table. A table is essentially what we had. Let's come to this one. This one. So this is a table. The whole structure we are seeing is in the form of a table. Okay, you see that it has filter buttons and all that. If you are seeing this, then it's a table that you are seeing over there. Good. Also, take note of the icons. If the query produces a table, look at the icon that it produces. If it produces a record, this is how it appears to be. If it is not a record, but rather it is a list, it has a way it appears. Let's kind of generate a list so that we look at the icon. So equal to, let me bring the, then I do 1, 2, 3. Another shorthand for creating a sequence of values is I can do 1 dot dot. Yeah. So 1 dot dot 12 is giving me a list of 12 numbers. Okay. So if, assuming you want 100 numbers, you can just put the 100 as the last value, and then it gives you that list. So let's look at the icon for a list. So if you are seeing it this way, then that's a list that has been produced. So that's a record, that's a table, that's a list. Another query, if you have a string like this, you see, it just gives you the ABC. If you have your query resulting in a number, this is how the icon looks like. So this is essentially to help you ascertain the fact that if you have a list, this is how the icon is going to look like. If you have a table, if you have a record, these are how they are going to look like, okay? So do take note of that. Then there are functions. That's where it gets interesting. For instance, what we have here, this table.transform types. It's a function. These are predefined expressions that sort of help us to perform specific calculations or transformations, okay? And there are a whole lot of them. Because of time, we won't be able to go through these functions, but you can actually access all the functions on Microsoft's website or on your computer itself within the Power Query interface. So there is this shorthand. You can go in there, and if you want to know about a particular function, for instance, I want to know about text function, I can say text at, I won't provide any parameters or argument. I'll just hit the enter button or commit, and then it will give me documentation on that function, okay? So that you read about it and you get to know how to use it. So you see, it's not difficult to learn this thing at all. If you want all of the functions that are existing, you can type the hash symbol and type shared. Please, it's a lower case expression. I've told you that the M language is case sensitive. So whatever you put in there, make sure is the right one. If you don't put the right one, so assuming that I make the S uppercase, it will not give me the result I'm looking for. So it says expression syntax error, okay? So you would want to be mindful of what you put in there. So once I've done it this way, what happens is this will load the list of functions that exist within the Power Query M language ecosystem. So you get to learn about all these things. So text.type, text at, text.from, start with, all these are splendid tools that are available to slice through data and transform it to your advantage so that you can gain further insights on them. All right, so we are not going to go through all the functions and all that. Whenever you are going through your learning process and you want to know how to use a particular function, you can use these two approaches that I have provided for you to learn about them. And you can do a self kind of tutoring experience, you doing going through it like this. So essential value types, there are more, but these are the main ones that I think you should be concerned with. So I've already told you about the fact that if you want to know the value type, you type into the value.type and then you provide the expression or whatever item, and then it will give you the value type. Another way is to use the is keyword. Okay, so you bring the value is, then you specify if it's a number. That one will give you a true or a false. So maybe I write 1 is number, then it will tell me yes, 1 is a number by saying true or false. So that's a conditional expression over there. All right, then I've told you about the function. You can find out about them. There are operators that you can use, so equal to, greater than, less than, and stuff like that. If you want to say not equal to, so for instance, x is not equal to y, this is how you go about it, okay? And there's the or, the and, the not, which negates. If it is true and you say not, it means you want it to be false, okay? If it is false and you use not, you prefix it with not, it turns it to a true. So that is the logical not. Then there is the let and in block, the let and in block. So the code that gets generated when we click on the various steps in there result to the creation of a let and in block that has some steps in there. So for instance, I have this simple code block here. So let my add equal to A and B. Now the A and B in the parentheses then serve as parameters, okay? So like variables, think of them that way. So you are creating, if you use the equal to and then greater than consecutively in that fashion, you are mapping it to what is called a function, okay? So we are saying we have parameters like A and B. However, the calculation itself is what? A plus B. So it means it has to take A and then B and then put them together. So if we have, like, say, A plus B plus A, what it's going to do is whatever value that you provide for A and B is going to take A, add it to B, and then add another A. So that is what is going to happen. Then we have my result. My result is giving us my add, okay? What am I talking about here? All that I'm saying is that we have this block that indicates the expression, that's the let and the in. However, in between them, we have steps. So my add is equal to this is a step. My result is equal to this is a step. My result type is equal to value dot type my result. What we are doing is we are referencing the previous step. So you see value dot type, I'm asking it the previous step, the result, what type of value is it? And once you are done, the step that you want to display is what you bring at the in step, okay? So in result type. So result type was here. I want the result from the result type. If I wanted the actual result, I'll say my result over here. All right, so let's kind of move to the query window and then just have a slide experience of what I'm talking about so that it doesn't seem so abstract. So let me just copy that code and then we go here. There's something called the advanced editor. You click on it. It gives you a blank editing area where you can paste in a code. Okay, so we are saying let's zoom in. Sorry. Let my add be equal to the, and note this, you can name your step anything that you want, okay? The only thing you need to take note of is that if you are starting your step with a special character like the pound sign, the dollar sign, or number, or if your step is going away, if you don't do it like that, it will be treated as an error. So if you've ever seen the query interface code and it's having the hash double quotes, that will mean your step name has either a special character in there or a space. But if you don't want to bother yourself with the double quotes and the hash symbol, you can use camel casing or those kind of naming structures where you don't have to use space, okay? So I prefer to do it that way. It's easier to write. Yeah, so I've done it this way. So this is equal to that. This is equal to that. And then I'm picking the result type. So when I click on OK, it will evaluate it and tell me that the result is a number. Assuming, so this is not really giving me the value of the calculation, but giving me the value type. Assuming I use this step instead, then I'll get 5 because 2 plus 3 is actually 5, okay? So that is what is going on. So first, this is the first step, is asking me for the parameters A and B. Then it evaluates that to be 5 because I gave 2 and 3. Then I asked for what that value type is, which is a number. And so it is telling me that it is a number. And that is why we see number as a final result of this query. Good. The next thing that I think we've talked about naming. So I'm going to skip that. There's something called commenting when it comes to the scope of programming, stuff like that. So it's essentially a way we use to leave notes within the code so that next time probably you get to remember what you were dealing with and stuff like that. And so because of that, we can use, let me pull up this example here and then go to the advanced editor. So this is an example of the code. Okay, let's take something simple. This one. Okay, so if I want to leave comment in line, okay, just within the line, we use double forward slashes, okay? Then you can type whatever you want. So maybe this is my function. I type it in there like that. Let's zoom in. So you see that the color is different. If I want to do a multi-line commenting, I will start with 1 forward slash followed by an asterisk. Then I tell, or I write whatever I want to write. So say this is an example, and maybe you close that off with the asterisk and then forward slash again. So this becomes a comment that can span across several lines before it breaks, okay? This other comment rather, this other commenting structure rather, is for just one line, okay? If you precede it with double lines, it means you are working on just one line. So that's essentially what we are trying to mean here. So if you want a multi-line commenting, you do forward slash asterisk, you type whatever you want to type in between those two, and then you are good to go. All right. There is also the use of the if then else structure. I'll quickly explain that and then we'll kind of bring things to we wrap things up. Okay. So the if then else structure, those of us that are familiar with the if function in Microsoft Excel, you realize that you give certain condition. If that condition is true, then something should be done. If it is false, then that's exactly what is being demonstrated here. So if, for instance, 2 is greater than 1, then yes, else no. So obviously this is going to return yes, okay? The second example where we try to take it up a little bit is if now what you are seeing in the bracket, the score, is actually referencing the field, okay, within a table. So if score is greater than or equal to 90, then A. Else, if score is greater than or equal to 80, then B. And I'm sure with this, a lot of us here probably are getting to know what can be done with this. There are so many things you can do with this kind of expression. And trust me, you are definitely going to need it if you decide to delve deeper into this space. There is also the try or otherwise, okay? So usually that is used to test if an expression results in an error. So you try something, if it results in an error, then something else should be done, okay? Yeah. So if you try and then doesn't result in an error, then what you have is what you get. So for instance, try 1 divided by 0. Otherwise, tell us that it is an error, division by 0, okay? So that is one application of it. So assuming you write a condition that is likely to result in an error, which will cause your query to break, you can use this to mitigate against that. Then let's quickly look at getting files from content, or getting the file content. The function used for that is folder.files. I'm just going to tell you about these things. And for those of us that may want to delve deeper into how to use some of these functions and the application of these functions in our line of work, like I said, I'll be having a whole lot of videos on them available for you. So there's the use of folder.files, there's the use of folder.content, and there are differences in here. So folder.files gets to the folder, picks the folder, the files that are within that folder, okay? Then folder.content will sort of also get the content of the folder. Rather, if you are having subfolders within the folder, folder.files will grab everything that is in the top level folder and every subfolder within that folder. However, folder.content will not dive deeper into the subfolders, but will give you the files that are within the top folder to work on. Then there is the use of file.content. So once you zoomed in on a particular file to use, if you want to get the content of the file, that is what we use. Then there's excel.workbook. You use that to get data if what you are working on is an Excel file, okay? Then use of excel.current workbook. This one provides the content of your current Excel workbook, and usually you get to see this if you say have a table within your Excel workbook, and then you are trying to pull the table into your query editor so that you work on it. So for instance, there's an example like table.expand table column. Then you see an expression like excel.current workbook, and then content. The content is the column that you are trying to work on or pull data from. And then I've specified that I want columns 1 or column 2. You can actually also specify the number of columns to pull and then to be pulled for you. All right. Then there's the use of pdf.tables for those of us that may want to grab data from PDF tables. And then there's the use of CSV.document. I think we've spent a little bit over 2 hours, and so we'll quickly bring this to a close, though I had wanted us to look at pulling data from PDF and stuff like that, but I want us to consider this. Still, there are ethical concerns that I want to drive home. When handling data, please let's be very careful. It is something that can make someone happy, can also make someone unhappy, basically. And you wouldn't want your actions to cause someone to be unhappy. I think as humans, we should strive to make each other happy. And so when handling data, especially if you are in the capacity to handle data of people, you should be very, very cautious about how you deal with the data, how you disclose data, how you use the data and all that, okay? Minimize what you collect as much as possible. If it is not necessary, please don't bother collecting it. Don't bother keeping it, okay? Then once you've collected the data, I will entreat you to keep it well so that there won't be data breaches. Okay, so do all that is within your power to ensure that the data is well kept and secured. Then there's the issue of fairness or bias mitigation, being fair in how you collect the data, how you keep it and all that. Don't say this one is like this, so I'm going to keep it this way or that way. Be fair. Then you should also be accountable for the data that is entrusted to you, okay? Then you should know how to share and use the data and be transparent in your decision making so that it will impact positive assessment. Next steps. By way of next steps, what I mean is those of us that may be willing to dive deeper. Of course, what we've done is something that truly would take several weeks for people to go through if you really want to dive deeper. However, those that may be willing to dive deeper are free to get in touch with me so that we dive deeper together. And so because of that, I have a YouTube channel, like I said, has a little bit of twist to it. So if you want to find me on YouTube, this is the YouTube channel. You can search for Biney 2369 within the YouTube channel space, and then you locate this icon, then you subscribe, and then we learn together, okay? If you want to move straight without searching, you can also use the URL specified down there, and you will be able to reach me. All right, so at this point, I think I would say that it's been nice talking to you. We've got into the Q&A session. I'm going to open up the microphones. Those of us that may have a few questions about what has been presented so far regarding automation, how to capture data, and then Power Query, you are free to shoot. I think we'll be glad to answer your questions. So I'm enabling the mics now. So you put up your hand, you ask the question, and then I'll do my best to try to answer your question. I think we have someone. Let's see. I see Bole District. Forgive me, your name is not there, so you can ask your question, please. Yeah, participant from Bole District. Your hand is up. All right, though your hand is up, you are not talking, so I don't know whether if you are having an issue with your microphone, you probably can type it. I'll be glad to read it out and then see how best we can address that. So aside this participant, is there any other person who has a question? If you have a question, kindly put your hand up and then, okay. So I take it that what has been said has gone down well. Essentially, data is the new oil. It is part of us. No matter what we do, it's going to be part of us for a very long time. It's not going anywhere. And we need to be efficient in our line of work. How we handle data affects a whole lot. So please up your game and then upgrade yourselves and then ensure that in your line of duty, whatever data system that is entrusted onto you to work with, you do your best to ensure it is well kept and then well used to attain whatever result that is desired, or whatever decision that is made. Okay, yeah. So that's me over there, and I thank you so much for staying tuned to listen to this presentation to the end. Like I said, if you want to reach out to me, help you with technical solutions, I'm available. Thank you, and then have a nice day. Bye bye.
Thank you, man. Thanks, Biney.
Thank you so much, Mr. Biney.
Thank you very much.